Friends, our second reading comes from the Gospel of Mark. Listen for the word of the Lord as it speaks to us today. People were bringing little children to him in order that he might touch them. And the disciples spoke sternly to them. But when Jesus saw this, he was indignant and said to them, "Let the little children come to me. Do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly, I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it." He took them up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Jesus, what do you think you would find? I'd encourage you to try it sometime. I did it just this last week. I Google searched the word Jesus to see what the top results were, and in the image bar, many different things showed up, many of which were very interesting. I'd like to tell you a few of the things that I found. I found Jesus as a ripped, strong, white dude with a tattoo of the word Father inside a heart on his right bicep. I found Jesus with beautiful, flowing blonde hair, a wrinkle-free white robe surrounded by bright orange and yellow lights. I found Jesus as Kanye West. Some of you may know Kanye West, a rapper who just released an album called Jesus is King. He was in the top 5. I found Jesus as a handsome combination of Brad Pitt and Kevin Costner and any other good-looking movie star that you could imagine. If you could Google search the images that you have learned to associate with Jesus, what would pop up on the screen? What would pop up on the screen? I was not surprised when I searched Jesus on Google to find that Google image Jesus was a Jesus crafted in our own image. One of my favorite pastors and scholars, N.T. Wright, says that one of the problems with reading the New Testament in the 21st century world is that it's often like looking down to the bottom of a well. What we find is not Jesus, but rather a mirror image of ourselves looking back at us. We find a Jesus who voted for the candidate that we voted for, who sees the world the same way that we see it, who agrees with every little thing we do, every decision that we make. Reading the Gospels this way is much easier, right? Because it means that Jesus is safe and calm and quiet, and he certainly will not interrupt us or challenge us to live our lives differently. I'm sorry if I ruined Jesus for you today, but if we started posting pictures on Google based on Mark's gospel, we'd be a bit taken aback at what we would find. Not only would we be very uncomfortable with the fact that Jesus looks much more like people from the Middle East with whom we have been enemies for 2 decades than he does like us, but we'd also not appreciate some of Jesus' harsher emotions. If we Snapchatted or Instagrammed a picture of the scene from Mark's gospel today, we would be surprised to find that Jesus is red in the face with anger. Indignant is actually the word that Mark uses to describe him. Of all the images you have in your head of Jesus, is angry Jesus one of them? It's not for me. Even when Jesus is flipping over the money changers' tables at the end of Mark's gospel, Mark does not say that Jesus is angry. This is the only place. So why here? Why now? Why, when the children come before him, Why is Jesus angry? What do you think? The crowds were swelling around Jesus like paparazzi around a celebrity, like the crowds at the Tour Championship last year when Tiger walked down the 18th hole, people running around him, enveloping him so much that he basically disappeared. Some of the Jewish rabbis were debating Jesus, as they often did, on many difficult topics, divorce among them. I imagine that the crowd is sitting, listening like a crowd listening to a presidential debate. They're quiet and soaking in every word. That is until a group of parents emerge with their children in tow, rudely interrupting the adults who are having important conversation. I got to be honest, I half expected Jesus to do what one of my pastors growing up used to do when children like myself, and as any good younger brother would do, would poke my sisters with pencils and giggle during the sermon. He would stop, take a long look at us. Apparently, the disciples knew my pastor growing up because they don't just shoot the parents and children a judgmental glance. They take it up a notch. Our translation says that they spoke sternly to them, which makes it sound like the tone my mother used when she would give me a time out, usually after I tried to poke my sisters during the sermon. But sternly fails to get at what's going on here. A better translation would be rebuke. What they're doing is the disciples are publicly humiliating these parents and these kids in front of the crowds as Jesus debates with the Pharisees. If you want to know just how irritated and upset the disciples are that those parents and children are interrupting them, all you need to know is that almost exclusively this word, sternly or rebuke, is the word Jesus uses to rebuke the demons when he is exorcising them out of other human beings. The disciples treat the parents and children the same way that Jesus treats demons. Hey, you parents, get those kids out of here. The master is trying to speak. The great healer, Jesus, doesn't have time for you or your children. He's busy. He's got bigger fish to fry. He's got to save the world after all. The disciples stand back feeling pleased with themselves because they've done their job. They've protected their rabbi. And in the first century, they weren't entirely wrong to be upset. Because in the first century world, children were not only some of the most vulnerable among people because of high infant mortality rates, some of which scholars say were 50%. 1 in 2 children had a chance of dying. But also because they weren't considered to have much value. In the Roman world, they were sometimes even expendable. There are stories of Roman families leaving children that they did not want out on the side of the road. So to a prominent, famous, celebrity Jewish preacher like Jesus, of course, he could not possibly have time for the children. So everybody is sitting, like you all are now, staring up at me and waiting to see what in the world Jesus is going to say next. Much to our surprise, when Jesus sees what is going on, he becomes angry. What are you doing? Let the children come to me. Do not stop them. The kingdom of God belongs to them. Truly, I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it. He bent down, and he took them up in his arms, and he blessed them, and he touched them. One of the most intimate scenes in all of the Gospels. when I was 9, Arnold Palmer, one of the greatest golfers of all time, or one of the greatest drinks of all time if you're not a golf fan, came to my small town to play 9 holes at a course that was opening in his name. And because my father was a real estate agent near that course, we were lucky enough to go and to see him play and to follow him with a small group of people. Now, I remember watching as a young kid, seeing how people treated Mr. Palmer like royalty. It was, oh, Mr. Palmer this and Mr. Palmer that, and they would open doors for him, and the young people would swarm to try to get a picture with him or to get autographs with him. The course even set up a gourmet buffet for Arnold Palmer and all of the business executives, which he famously refused and bought a turkey sandwich at the 19th hole concession stand like the rest of us. I remember watching him golf, and probably like the crowds with Jesus, I understood at a young age that being in his presence was a significant thing. The only problem was that the course managers kept pushing the eager children like myself back away from him as he would hit his shots. Give the king some space. Quiet, please. Mr. Palmer is hitting his shot. That is until Arnie got angry. And he turned around and he looked at me and all the other kids with their dads and said to the managers, hey, what are you doing? Let the little kids come to me. Hey, you kids, get up close and watch me hit this next shot. And make sure you cheer if it's a good one. Cheer we did. Arnold wanted the little children to come to him. Jesus wanted the little children to come near. Of all the things that astound me about Jesus, and there are many, and of all the images that we choose to describe him with, of which there are many, his healing power, his unlimited grace, his wonderful teachings, his lowly birth as a child, this image of the children coming to him is not one that I have often reflected on as at the core of who we are as the Christian church. We do not say in the Apostles' Creed, we believe Jesus was a lover of children. But he was. He was so much so that he got angry when his disciples tried to keep the children away from him. So often I have heard that Jesus loved the children because of their innocence. This is how the interpretation usually goes. Become like a child, we say, because they are naive and innocent and simple. But do you parents love your children because they are innocent? My bet is that there's more. There is more to their uniqueness, to their personhood that makes you love them. I don't think that's why Jesus loved children. No, I think Jesus loved them because unlike us adults who come to Jesus expecting answers, expecting a piece of him, the children come to Jesus without an agenda, without any presupposed image of Jesus in their head. For children, Jesus is like Mr. Rogers. They're just simply drawn to his presence, to his bright light, to his eternal acceptance. Children belong to him. The children come to Jesus because he is Jesus, because they long to be touched by him, to be in his arms. The kingdom is theirs because they receive it in his embrace. The problem is, somewhere along the line, we tell children to stop going to Jesus. We do. Stop being so childish. Act your age. Don't be such a baby. Grow up. Somewhere along the line, we take their beautiful childlike wonder, curiosity, their trust in us adults, and their radical acceptance of any stranger who walks in the door. And instead, we introduce them to the poisonous idea that the kingdom of God is something you have to achieve rather than receive. We teach them that this beautiful story of love and forgiveness called the Bible is really just a recipe book full of rules that if you follow just closely enough, God may love you, but you'll have to earn your keep. We tell children that the point of faith is that they become mature adults like us, but Jesus has it the other way around. We adults, we spend so much time and energy trying to be good adult Christians. Do we not? But when is the last time you just ran toward Jesus with reckless abandon? We try so hard to volunteer the right amount, to be known in the community, to sit respectfully and worship, but when's the last time you just sat beneath Jesus' feet just to be touched by him, to be blessed by him? Especially in our Presbyterian tradition and in our United States, we obsess over head knowledge, do we not? The more you know of God, the more you know God. But what if we must first be known? What if we must first be known by God as a parent knows a child before our head knowledge matters at all? Jesus doesn't love the children because of what they know. He loves them because of who they are. In our culture, especially often for us guys, we like to be tough. We like to be put together, stoic, impenetrable to pain, and impervious to doubt. But what we all really need in today's world is to be held in our Savior's everlasting arms. It's like when my mother was recently diagnosed with breast cancer. I asked her, I said, "Mom, how does that make you feel?" She said, I just want a hug from my dad. I just want to be held. Unless you receive the kingdom of God like a child, you can't enter it. Receive it. Hold out your hands and receive the gift, because it is a gift that is for you, and you can do nothing, say nothing to achieve or earn it. You can only receive this kingdom. You can earn God's kingdom no more than you can earn the name that you were given at birth. It was just something that was given to you, something you received, something that is uniquely yours. I'd like to end by sharing with you what I say to our youth before every youth group. It's sort of a thesis statement, what I think we're all supposed to be doing in youth ministry. The most important thing about you and about any person ever born is that you are a beloved child of God. There is nothing you can do that will make God love you any more or any less. No matter how far you run or hide from him, no matter how far gone is your inner child, no matter how hard you have worked slaving to earn his love, no matter how much you have believed that you will never be worthy of his kingdom or his grace, no matter what, Jesus is waiting for you to interrupt him, to jump into his chest, to be held, to be blessed, to be touched by Jesus.